The quiet period for a finished story. A divorce not marked by tears. He's grown up now, I thought, staring into the void in front of me, feeling a sense of relief creeping into every fiber of my being. He doesn't need his parents to play pretend anymore. This play, it's time for the curtain to fall, and now we can live authentically. The moment I signed the divorce papers, I didn't feel overwhelming relief, nor did I feel heart-wrenching pain. It was just an infinite emptiness, as if a huge part of me had just been set free, yet also lost. It was a gloomy afternoon, neither sunny nor rainy, just a pale light filtering through the old worn window of the courthouse. Everything happened quickly, neatly, without any drama, without a single argument or complaint. Between us, people who were once each other's everything, now just two strangers sitting opposite each other holding pens, as if holding a silent period at the end of a story with nothing left to write. Everything began to crack 11 years ago when our son was just 6 years old. Old enough to sense the instability in the family, the extreme tension between his mom and dad, but too young to understand the deeper reasons. Those days our home was no longer a sanctuary, but a battlefield without gunfire. We fought every night relentlessly. Each argument was a fiery verbal duel, words sharp as daggers. Every word a cut into the other's soul, more painful than silence or physical blows. We hurled words at each other that left both of us breathless, unable to continue living under the same roof. Resentment and anger accumulated daily like a volcano poised to erupt. The climax came when I left home for 2 weeks, wandering like a homeless person in my own city. I crashed at friends' places in my car just to avoid confronting the suffocating tension of coming home. I'd rather endure the loneliness outside than face her hateful gaze. She was no less fierce. I still vividly remember her screaming on the phone in the middle of the night when our son had a high fever, her voice tearing through the darkness, tearing through my last shred of resistance. Both of us felt like giving up, utterly exhausted from trying to hold on to a broken thread, a rotten love. But then one day, as our war reached its peak, when she and I were screaming at each other in the living room, our son appeared. He stood between us, his face red, tears streaming down his small shoulders, trembling, sobbing. His eyes were filled with fear and despair, a fear no child should ever have to experience. "Mom and Dad, please don't leave each other. I promise I'll be good. I promise I won't be naughty anymore. I promise I'll study really hard." That sentence froze me. Not out of regret for what I had done, but because of a brutally obvious truth. We could endure each other, could live in this hell, but our son didn't deserve to endure a broken family when he was too young to understand that sometimes separation, letting go, is the kindest, most humane thing adults can do for each other and for their children. But he couldn't understand that. For a child, family is everything, its only safe shell. So we went back. Not because of love. That flame had long since died, leaving only ashes and indelible scars, but because of responsibility. The responsibility of parents. And out of fear, the fear that he would grow up missing a part, missing completeness, missing a complete family, even if that completeness was just a facade, a fragile shell. We moved back into the old house together. The house was the same, but the atmosphere was different. A peace born of a cold compromise, an unspoken contract between two adults. Our daily schedule was laid out as clearly as a co-ownership plan, a strict business contract down to the smallest clause: who picks up and drops off our son, who attends parent-teacher conferences, who is responsible for breakfast, who is responsible for extracurricular activities. Every task was clearly assigned. No one overstepped, no one helped out, no one complained. We were perfect partners in raising our child. There was only one thing no one took responsibility for anymore: loving each other. I didn't blame her. She didn't blame me either. We behaved properly, like strangers, maintaining minimal courtesy. We took full care of our son, lacking nothing materially or in outward attention. Family photos were still taken annually, all three of us with bright, unbelievably perfect smiles. The three of us still went to the park, still celebrated birthdays, still celebrated Christmas, still rang in the new year. Friends and relatives who looked at us would all say, "You two seem so close lately. Must be because of your son that you reconnected." We just smiled, neither nodding nor denying, because we knew this closeness was a perfectly crafted mask, enough to fool even our closest loved ones. We were excellent actors in the play of our own lives. During the day, we were a model family, but only at night, after our son was sound asleep in his own room, when his steady breathing echoed in the quiet space, did the house suddenly fall into a state of non-existence for us. A terrifying silence, a dead space enveloped everything. That was when the stage curtain fell and the two actors returned to themselves. I often hid in my study, typing away on the keyboard until late, burying myself in work as a way to escape reality. She was in the bedroom, the faint yellow light emanating from under the door showing she was still awake, perhaps reading, watching movies, or simply lying there tossing and turning in her own thoughts. The door was always shut, both the room's door and her heart's door. A clear, unbreakable barrier. Once I heard her sobbing in the bathroom, her muffled cries drowned out by the sound of water. I stood silently outside the door, my hand lightly clenched on the doorknob, then released it. I wanted to go in, wanted to ask, wanted to comfort. But I knew there are some sorrows, some pains. No one can save anyone when both are the cause of each other, when both are drowning in the deep hole they themselves dug. We were too tired to touch each other emotionally. Many years passed like this, flowing in a terrifying silence. Each day was a copy of the day before, each week a repetition of the last. Our son grew up, and with his growth we slowly lost ourselves. He no longer needed us to read him bedtime stories, no longer asked for us to walk him to school every day. He went to school on his own, dealt with his friends' problems on his own, made small choices in his life on his own. He grew and became independent day by day. And with his independence, our presence in his life gradually became less important naturally. It turned out that when our child was no longer small and in need of absolute protection, the only reason we were still together gradually lost its urgency. We began to realize that we had lived in this facade for too long, to the point where we didn't know if we could ever live authentically again. And then one day, he booked a plane ticket, preparing to study abroad in England. It was his dream, a dream he had cherished for a long time, and also the goal we had lived for over a decade. In that moment, I knew the time to end this play was very near. I saw him off at the airport. She stood beside me, forcing a smile, giving him all sorts of advice. Her final words of caution before he left home. The three of us hugged tightly one last time before he took off. He said, "I love you, Mom and Dad," and we said, "We love you too." Rare sincere words, and also the last words within a rotten emotional shell. As he turned to walk away, I looked at her, and for some reason I sighed in relief. A strangely overwhelming sense of lightness, as if a 1,000-pound burden had been lifted. She looked at me too, and I saw in her eyes a shared understanding, a silent liberation. Between us, without a single word, there was a deep understanding that everything was about to end. A week later, when the house returned to its true silence, no longer filled with a child's sounds, no longer under the pressure of being a model family, I left the divorce papers on the dining table. Nothing written but a single line like a final offer and empowerment for her. "If you're ready." That afternoon I came home. She had signed. Neatly, directly, without hesitation, like someone who had waited for this day long enough, patiently enough for the moment of release. Everything unfolded without a word. Between us, who had once shared everything, there was now nothing left to say. Sitting in my silent study after all the formalities were complete, I suddenly drifted into memories. I recalled the first days when we were two infatuated souls dreaming of a beautiful future. We once loved each other. I have to say that because otherwise, you might think we got together out of arrangement, out of pressure, out of indifference. No, we once loved. Truly loved, crazily loved, to the point where it felt like we could overcome anything. She was once the person I waited for after work every evening, the one I chose to marry, because I thought, this will be the person I spend my whole life with, my destiny. We once had dates in the rain, swore eternal love under the moon, hugged so tightly we didn't want to let go. Handwritten letters, hastily penned loving messages sent in the middle of the night, all were proof of a passionate love. But then marriage isn't like love. And when our son came, everything began to change slowly and silently, like an invisible disease gnawing away little by little. In the early years when our son was little, we were so busy we didn't have time to hate each other. Every night was exhausting. She would fall asleep on the sofa holding our son. I would wash mountains of laundry, clean up the battlefield of his toys, go online to buy formula, search for information on how to raise children. We lived like two friends raising a child together, diligent, responsible, but lacking the intimacy, the connection of a couple. Conversations revolved only around our son. Sleep was restless, meals were rushed. Gradually, we stopped hugging before bed. Stopped asking, "Are you tired?" Stopped joking, stopped holding hands on walks. All that remained were logistical questions. Cold transactional inquiries like, "Can you pick up our son this afternoon? Parent-teacher conference tomorrow, who's going? Have you paid his tuition yet?" Our intimacy dwindled, then vanished completely. At first I comforted myself. It's probably because our son is young. We're too busy. Wait a few years, things will be different. But years passed, our son grew older. We had a little more time, but nothing returned. No one initiated. No one spoke. An invisible forbidden zone formed between us where emotions were no longer allowed to be named, where all desires were buried under the guise of responsibility. Then one day, I found her texting her ex. Nothing over the line, no overly intimate words, but enough to know her heart had left this place. It no longer belonged to me, no longer belonged to this house. It had gone looking for another place to anchor. I didn't make a big deal out of it, didn't scream or break things. I just asked directly, my voice full of weariness and disappointment, like a final plea for the truth. "Do you still love me?" She was silent for a very long time. Her eyes gazed into the distance. Then she quietly said, her voice faint and brutally honest, "I don't know anymore." That sentence hurt more than any confession, any breakup. Because it was an admission that love had died, but no one was brave enough to say it, to accept that harsh truth. We started fighting more, about trivial, meaningless things, unwashed dishes, forgetting to pick up our son, unpaid tutoring fees, or even who would take out the trash. But I knew deep down we were venting unspoken wounds, slow-burning hurts that had accumulated for a long time, disappointments that had turned into invisible knives slowly cutting each other. And then one day she said, her voice eerily calm, as if discussing the whether I want to separate. For a while, I agreed. No clinging, no arguing, not a word of protest. Because honestly, I was too tired to continue living next to someone where every morning I woke up, I didn't know how to greet her, how to face her emotionless gaze. Both of us yearned for release, even if only temporary. 2 months later, while we were in the separation phase, each living a separate life in the same city, an unexpected event occurred. Our son fell gravely ill. High fever, convulsions, he had to be hospitalized urgently. She called me in the middle of the night, her voice trembling, choked with fear. I rushed to the hospital, forgetting all anger and the distance between us. We both stayed awake all night in the hospital room, watching his every breath, his every small movement. Neither of us ate or slept. Only boundless worry for our son enveloped everything. The next morning, when the fever had subsided, our son woke up. He saw his mother and me sitting on either side of the bed, our faces pale, our eyes sunken from lack of sleep. He held both our hands tightly, his small hands damp with sweat, whispering, his voice weak but haunting. A sentence I later realized carried such immense weight. "Mom and Dad, can you please stop fighting? I'm so scared." That sentence was like a slap in the face, a lightning bolt. I looked at her, and she looked at me too. For the first time in months, our eyes met. No more anger, no more blame, no more hostility. Just a shared sorrow, a shared pain for the child who had seen more than he should have, who had endured more than he should have. In that moment, I felt an invisible thread connecting us again, not with love, but with responsibility and pity. After our son recovered and was discharged from the hospital, we sat in the kitchen, which had once been the battlefield for endless arguments. The atmosphere was silent. No one wanted to stir up old pains. She was the first to speak, her voice light like a final offer, a resigned compromise. "How about we try again, for our son?" I nodded, without hesitation, without a second thought. At that moment, I had no romantic notions of mending our love or rebuilding our marital life. Only the image of our pale, weak son in the hospital bed and his haunting plea. "It's not because I believe love still exists. It's because I don't want him to grow up thinking divorce is the worst thing that can happen. I don't want him to be hurt anymore, don't want him to feel like he's the cause of our breakdown." So we went back. No more passion, no more romance, no more love whatsoever. We moved back in together like two professional actors returning to an old play, a play with no audience other than the single audience member we both loved more than ourselves, our son. We played that role well for many years, perfectly, to the point where no one noticed, no one suspected. But the price was ourselves. We gradually lost our true laughter, our true emotions, our personal desires. I gradually became hardened, an emotionless man who only knew how to fulfill his duties. She gradually closed herself off like a snail, living only in its safe shell, no longer daring to express any emotions. We lived dutifully, responsibly, but no longer authentically with our feelings. The years after getting back together for our son were a time, I'm not sure what to call them. It was no longer a marriage in the true sense, nor was it a complete separation. Even less were we friends, because there was still an invisible tension between us, an insurmountable barrier. We lived side by side like two people renting the same house, raising a child together, splitting duties, and avoiding anything that could touch our emotions, anything that could stir up old pains. Every morning I brewed coffee. 1 cup for me, 1 cup left on the table. Didn't ask if she wanted any. Didn't even bother to ask if she still liked her coffee strong or light. Indifference had become a habit. She cooked for the whole family, not out of love, but out of a mother's responsibility and undeniable duty. I washed the dishes not to help my wife, but because it was fair, it was my duty, like a housemate sharing chores. We still talked, but mostly only about our son, like partners managing a joint project. He got a 9 on his math test. He said he wants to learn guitar. His friends teased him about his parents fighting a lot. I comforted him. That came from her one cold evening. Her words startled me. It was a subtle warning that our play wasn't as perfect as we thought. Our son, despite his young age, had begun to realize the truth. In the evenings, our son went to sleep first. We slept in separate rooms officially a few months after our reconciliation. The reason given was she had trouble sleeping. But I knew it was because we no longer felt safe lying next to each other. No more closeness, no more intimacy, only a suffocating and unsettling strangeness. Her bedroom door was always tightly shut, like an unspoken declaration of the invisible boundary between us. Once I was seriously ill. Feverish, exhausted, bedridden all day. She left medicine on the bedside table, hot porridge in a pot on the stove, didn't ask if I needed anything, didn't hold my hand, didn't wipe my forehead. I didn't blame her, because if the roles were reversed, I would probably have done exactly the same. Indifference had become a thick shell protecting us from new hurts, from unfulfilled expectations. At some point, you no longer feel pain. You just become numb, cold, and accept that being together doesn't mean belonging together. Being together is just a parallel existence, not touching each other, not affecting each other. We never discussed divorce during that entire time. No one mentioned it. No one suggested it. We just silently endured, thinking, wait until he's a little older. Wait until he's in high school. Wait until he goes to college. Wait until he studies abroad. We dragged this play on to its extreme, all for one child, the sole reason to maintain a dead relationship. Our son was in 8th, then 9th, then 12th grade. I clearly saw that he also began to understand his parents didn't love each other, but they were trying to live decently, trying to sacrifice for him. He was smart enough to notice the small things, the deadly silences in this house, the forced smiles, the polite exchanges. His eyes sometimes showed a fleeting sadness, full of thought, more mature than his age. Once he asked me, his eyes full of thought, older than his years, "Dad, if I weren't little anymore, would you and Mom still be living together?" I was silent for a long time. My heart clenched. I looked at him into his mature and understanding eyes. His words were like a sharp knife piercing straight through my heart. Then I spoke, my voice hoarse as if trying to swallow tears. "Maybe not, but we'll still be your parents no matter what happens. You'll always be our son, the most precious thing we have." He nodded, a slow, knowing nod. And I knew from that moment he was more ready than we were, the adults struggling in our own play. Our son's maturity wasn't just physical, but also mental, about understanding. I once thought, if I live in this role long enough, will I forget I'm acting? Will the pretense become reality? But it turned out not. Every time I watched her turn away after dinner, going to her own room, every time I heard the soft click of her door locking, every time a birthday passed with just a faint, "happy birthday," no kiss, no intimacy, no warmth, I remembered again, I once loved this person, loved her passionately, and now I don't. And worst of all, she doesn't either. We were just two wandering shadows in this large house. The day my son received a full scholarship to study abroad in England, I saw her eyes light up for the first time in years. Not just out of pride for his achievement, for his bright future, but because we knew the only reason we were still together was about to leave. Freedom was very close, a door had opened for both of us. No one said anything. No need to. But both of us understood after he flew, that's when we could be honest with ourselves and with each other. The time to end this play had come. And as you know, exactly 1 week after he left, I placed the divorce papers on the table. She signed, neatly, directly, without hesitation, without needing an explanation. Because sometimes the truly important things, the big decisions, don't need many words. Just the understanding of two tired hearts yearning to be set free. I left the courthouse close to noon. It wasn't scorching hot, nor was it raining. Only a very clear feeling enveloped me, relief. Not the kind of joyful relief, but the kind of lightness you feel when you set down something you've been carrying for too long, something so heavy you didn't even realize how heavy it was. An invisible burden that had weighed me down for 11 years. Finally, I could truly breathe, no longer having to brace myself. I didn't tell anyone in the first few days. Still went to work, still had meetings, still had coffee with colleagues. Everyone thought I was fine, still the quiet, calm man I usually was. And honestly, I thought so too. Only sometimes when I got home alone, I'd open a closet and see her dress still left behind, or an old family photo fall out of a drawer, and my heart would sink a little. Not out of regret for lost love, but remembering there once was an us truly deeply in love, and then quietly drifting apart, leaving indelible scars. And then one day an unexpected twist occurred, completely changing my perception of the past. My son called from England. He talked about his study abroad life, about new friends, about interesting lessons. Then his voice suddenly deepened, a rare seriousness, a cautious anxiety. "Dad, I have something to tell you. I'm sorry for lying to you and Mom all these years." I froze. I couldn't understand. "Lying about what, son? What did I do wrong to you?" He took a deep breath as if gathering all his courage, then confessed, "Actually, the day I had a high fever and had to go to the hospital, I wasn't scared at all. I just had a normal fever. I intentionally made myself sicker, intentionally made myself weaker, so you and Mom would worry, would stay by my side, would reconcile." My heart stopped. My whole body went cold. I couldn't believe my ears. A raw, painful, and utterly unexpected truth. It turned out the fateful day I thought was an awakening of responsibility, the moment I realized I needed to sacrifice for my son, was another play, a play orchestrated by my own 6-year-old son. He was smarter, more sensitive than any of us could have imagined. He had seen the cracks we tried to hide, and he had tried to mend them himself in a child's way. He continued, his voice full of remorse mixed with a slight choke. "I overheard you and Mom fighting many times. I knew you wanted to divorce. I was so scared. I was scared of not having a complete family, of not having a dad, not having a mom. I thought, if you and Mom got back together for me, you would never leave each other again. I thought that was the only way to keep you together." I was speechless. It turned out I had been living in a play not chosen by me, but orchestrated by my own son out of his love and fear. He had sacrificed his childhood carrying the fears of adults just to maintain a false home. And we, in our blind responsibility, didn't realize that this very sacrifice had made all three of us live in an invisible prison for 11 years. The pain wasn't just for the adults, but for the child too. "I know now that you and Mom are divorced. Maybe you'll be very angry with me, but I needed to say it. I needed to be freed from this secret." Tears streamed down my face, not from anger, but from sorrow. Sorrow for the boy who had to grow up faster than his age, sorrow for his innocent but painful act, and sorrow for myself for being so complacent in my role as the one who sacrificed, without realizing I was living in an illusion created by my own child, an illusion that had made the whole family suffer. "I'm not angry with you, son." I choked out, my voice trembling. "I just feel for you. You were so brave to say that. I'm sorry I didn't realize it sooner." The call ended. I sat in silence for a very long time. This twist not only changed my view of the past of sacrifice and responsibility, but also changed how I perceive love and truth. It turned out that sometimes what we think is saving is actually a burden. Life after the divorce wasn't filled with breakdown or tragedy as I had once imagined. We no longer held anger towards each other. Strangely, after the divorce, conversations between my ex-wife and me became more real, more sincere. We texted about our son, occasionally called to check in on each other's work and life. No more caution, no more maintaining distance. It was like two people who had once done something very wrong to each other and were now learning to treat each other decently, not to get back together but to leave gracefully so that the wounds could subside and heal. Once she texted, "I don't think we were a failure. We were just an example that not all efforts can save love. And sometimes sacrifice brings a burden to the one being sacrificed." I read that message for a long time. Her words were so true. They were like a final explanation for everything we had been through. Then I just texted back, "I agree. And thank you to our son too, for staying long enough, for him to grow up whole. And now all three of us have grown so much in ways we never expected." Our son learned about the divorce while he was in England. His mother and I video called him together. We explained everything clearly. No avoidance, no hiding. I even told him about his secret and said that we understood that we had forgiven his innocence and that we loved him unconditionally. He was silent for a moment, then nodded, his face looking much more at peace. "I see. I've known for a long time. I just didn't say anything. I was afraid you'd be angry with me. But now I know you've found peace, and I'm happy for that. I love you both very much." I hung up, sitting in silence for a long time. No tears. Just felt grateful for my son for understanding things better than the two adults in his life. And felt grateful for myself for finally being brave enough to stop when there was nothing left to continue. Peace isn't about going back to how things were to try and fill unfillable voids. Peace is when you stop trying to pretend and accept that some people, some paths are meant to be walked together, but not forever. Now every morning I still brew 2 cups of coffee, 1 cup for me, the other I pour out. Not out of regret or waste, but to remind myself that love, if there's no one left to receive it, then learn to pour it for yourself. Love yourself, heal your wounds, and be ready for a new chapter of life. I reconnected with a few old friends. Some were surprised, asking, You really got divorced? You two were together for so long? I thought you were the epitome of stability. I just smiled. Yeah, we were together for a long time. But we weren't really living together anymore. Being together doesn't mean being happy. I didn't explain much. Because honestly, if someone hasn't lived in a loveless marriage, a play that lasted over a decade, they won't understand the feeling of waking up every morning next to a stranger, which is more exhausting than being alone. Once I accidentally ran into her, my ex-wife, at a bookstore. She was with a man. I don't know who he was. A lover. A friend. A colleague. She saw me. Gave a slight nod. I nodded back. Neither of us approached. Neither of us spoke. But that look, it was no longer heavy, no longer tense or awkward. Between us there was only the respect of two people who had once walked a shared path and had now found their own. Perhaps it's because we did the right thing at the right time. We chose truth, we chose liberation instead of continuing to be buried under the weight of the past. My son sent his graduation photo. I looked at the picture of him standing under the London sky holding his diploma, smiling radiantly, and tears welled up in my eyes. Tears of pride, of relief, and also of belated regret. He had become a mature, independent man, no longer burdened by family issues. I texted him, "Mom and I are both so proud of you. You are the most beautiful thing we ever held on to together. And now we're happy that you get to live authentically, no longer having to brace yourself for anyone." He texted back, "Dad, I know. Your divorce wasn't because you gave up on responsibility, but because you wanted to live true to yourselves. I'm grown now. I understand. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for everything you did for me, and I also thank you for now choosing your own happiness." I read that message and felt my life lighten like the first breath after diving deep underwater, feeling as if I had been freed from an invisible burden that had been weighing me down all along. I don't know if I'll have someone beside me in the future. I'm not searching, nor am I avoiding it. It's just that right now I feel at peace being alone. If you ask me if I have regrets, I'll say yes. I regret that a love that was once beautiful didn't last until the end of the road. I regret that sometimes we were silent for too long, to the point where there was nothing left to say, nothing left to save. But I have no regrets, because I loved, truly tried truly, and in the end, I let go at the right time. No one enters a marriage only to end it with the words divorce. But if you have to choose between living authentically or continuing to hold on to an empty shell and endless play, then sometimes letting go is the way to preserve the most beautiful things in memory and the way to start a more authentic life, a true life of your own. Love each other fully while you still can, but also be brave enough to stop if being together is just a tiresome role, a burden weighing down both souls. This story, a journey of endurance and ultimately liberation, is a profound reminder that love can bring responsibility, but responsibility cannot replace love. Sometimes letting go of a dead relationship isn't a failure, but the courage to find yourself again and allow true happiness to enter your life. Never lose yourself trying to salvage something that no longer belongs to you, because you deserve a complete and happy life, a life that doesn't require pretense or suffering. If this story has sparked any thoughts or emotions in you, or if you have similar experiences, please don't hesitate to leave a comment below. Every share from you is an act of empathy, helping us feel less alone on this journey on the path to finding happiness. Don't forget to hit the like button to support this story. Share it with anyone you think might need to hear this message. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future profound stories, and turn on notifications to get the latest videos from me. Thank you for listening. See you in the next videos.